Joining us to break all this down with his perspective on it is Ben Smith, Semafor co-founder and editor-in-chief. Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, so let's try to figure this out. First of all, let's just go with the Trump of it all.
Yeah.
And the CNN piece, because that's sort of a new wrinkle in the saga. Do we think that now, no matter who buys this thing, that even if the Ellisons ultimately buy the completed asset, the full thing, that they're going to have to sell CNN, that he doesn't seem to be so happy with them over what's going on with 60 Minutes right now? And should the, I mean, we're sort of not even talking about whether this is okay, but nonetheless.
I mean, the basic structure of this is, I mean, this is about movies. David Ellison wants, has a small studio, wants to buy a big studio. And these news brands, CBS, CNN, are kind of essentially have turned into these sort of chits that you pay to Donald Trump for permission to be in the movie business. And it's in some ways like the risks of this kind of consolidation where news divisions are these tiny little minnows in this very big company. Yes, and the Ellisons went to Washington and I think actually rubbed some Republicans and some in the Trump administration the wrong way by being totally blunt that they saw this as a politicized deal where everyone would just do whatever was in the best interest of Donald Trump.
Well, the piece that you wrote was to argue basically, I mean, you've argued now that effectively the elephant's overstepped.
Well, that sure is what it looked like 3 days ago when there were Republicans and people around the administration saying, hey, you're not supposed to say this stuff out loud. This puts us in a weird position.
Well, the president says it out loud.
Yeah, and then, of course, the president goes and says it out loud, so here we are.
The whole thing reminds me of when you get mad about what happened with the Ivy League schools and the anti-Semitism and the shakedown from the Trumps, and people say, oh, my God, these wonderful schools, how can you do it? Without ascribing any blame or any reason for it. And I see the same thing with CNN. I see the same thing for CBS. I see the same thing for 60 Minutes. And the thing I thought,
you see
I think that there is a reason why Trump is like this. And I'm looking at the latest news from, this is what I want to talk about, the latest news from CBS. They have picked Tony Dokoupil to be their anchor.
Yeah.
Immediately, staffers at CBS are trashing this guy. As nice hair, Barry Weiss couldn't find anybody else. This is the best you can do because he had the unmitigated gall. The reason he got the job and the reason that the staffers hate him is there was an anti-Israel author. Remember? And he had an interview with him. And he said to the guy, he said to the guy, you sound like what you're saying in your book could be carried in the backpack of an extremist. And that, with mainstream media orthodoxy, that is, with Barry Weiss, it's like a feather in his cap. For everybody else, it's going against. For everybody else, it's going against mainstream. And Drudge, look at Drudge today, which I think is either owned by George Soros now or David Brock. Honestly, it is like Media Matters and drag. Drudge is right now. They have 5 stories about how bad this guy is just because of the original sin of saying something. And you ought to be with me on this. Well, he had the unmitigated gall to push back against, the orthodoxy that Israel is bad. That Israel is bad.
What's interesting here is that when it comes to CBS, I think the Ellisons have delivered on a kind of assumption that they would move the network to the right on Israel.
They're trying.
They have not actually.
They're trying.
The Trump administration does not particularly like Tony Dokoupil. He's not seen as particularly pro-Trump.
I'm not talking about him.
Trump is also mad about Paramount.
He is
putting
about
Marjorie
60
Taylor
Minutes,
Greene on. I think the challenge here, I mean, if you do believe the President of the United States ought to be the one making these decisions, he's not easy to satisfy.
No, he's not.
However far you go to please him,
I know as much
he's
as
just going to want more. I'm sure you're going to hear from him afterward that you cited Drudge, But I'm just glad we're all still reading Drudge, actually.
Why are we? I read it because there are because it's just so in the sewer.
The weird ones at the bottom of the page.
And we all like to go in the sewer occasionally. But my main reason for wanting David Ellison to finally win is so all these same staffers at CBS or at CNN will enjoy being under Barry Weiss.
Do you think the federal government ought to be the people making these decisions?
No, I don't think the federal government should do it. But I think they ought to acknowledge
that is what's happening,
the first thing.